Hello and welcome back to Geekatplay Studios. My name is Gary Miller, and in this tutorial we're continuing on with the previous tutorials on creating a building and some elegant windows and cutting the windows into our building. We're going to continue on by creating a roof. So with our building selected, I'm going to come up here to Select Faces. I'm going to select the top of my building. I'm going to come over here to Edit, come down to Copy, and I'm going to come back to Edit and hit Paste. What that's done is it's created a copy of our rooftop there. On our Vertex Modeling tab, I'm going to come up here to Sweep Surface Tool, click on the copy of the roof we just created, and by using my spacebar I'm going to cycle through the various functions that this tool offers, and I just want to come straight up. There we are, and just about there looks fine. I'm going to click Validate to finish off the use of that tool. Now if you look, all we've done is create a kind of a box lid. We need to create a bottom surface to this. So I'm going to come over here and under Vertex Modeling I'm going to click on Close, hit Close All, and that provides a solid surface to the bottom of my roof. And I do need to resize it just a little bit, and I'm going to resize it according to the offset here of the edges, and that looks pretty good. Now I need to adjust the size or the scale of the front and the back so it's even with the sides, and that looks good. I'm going to lift it up off my model. I'm going to use my Lay-On tool, click on Lay-On, either the top or the bottom of this roof piece we've created, and then I'm just going to click on my building and it lies it up flush against the top. Now I'm going to come over here to my Tessellate Tool. I'm going to click on Tessellate, click on the second tool in the Tessellate menu, and what I want to do is I want to draw a straight line right down the center of my rooftop. And to do that, I'm going to hold down my Shift key, and what that does is it constrains the movement of this tool to either the ends or the middle. And if you notice by moving it around, it kind of jumps to the three locations that this tool operates in. So with my Tessellate tool selected and my Shift pressed down, I'm just going to click, drag straight across, click again, hit Validate to finish off the use of that tool. Click on that vertex or edge that we selected and drag it up, and that's going to be our rooftop. Now if you want more of a rustic or maybe a European look to it, now would be the time to make the change. You can just adjust the offset however it is that you like. I'm going to leave it like this. Now what I need to do is, since we have a border that's defined by these two edges here along the top of our roof, I want to create that same border along the front and the back. And to do that, I'm going to grab my Tessellate tool again. I accidentally created a line here. Okay, I'm going to come up and grab my Tessellate tool. Now where it comes in contact with the end of a edge, it turns red. That lets me know I'm at the end of an edge and I'm not on the line itself, but rather on the very end. And that's where I want to be. So when it turns red, I'm going to click, I'm going to drag across, and it's red again, so I'm going to click again. I'm going to spin my model around and do the very same thing on the other side. Now we've got our border along the top of our roof. I'm going to come up here to Select Faces, and I'm going to click on the front, and holding down Shift I'm going to click on the back. That way both of them are selected. I'm going to come up here to my Sweep Surfaces tool, and rather than extrude outwards, I'm just going to extrude inwards just a little bit, like so. Now I'm going to come up and make sure my select surfaces is enabled. I want to select both parts of my rooftop, and I want to extract them from the building and make them their own separate objects. So I'm going to come over here to extract, and now I've got my own separate roof, and it separates it from the rest of the model. I'm going to hide the visibility of that for a few moments. Now there's several parts of this this roof piece that I've created that I don't need anymore. So I'm going to select that edge, delete that edge, delete, come around on this side, delete these two edges. Because if you were looking up from the ground at the top of the roof, you would see the roof top, not a continuation of this material stretched out across the roof. Now I need to scale my rooftop and create an overhang, and that looks a little much. Oh, that looks good. Again, the front and the back are going to be much longer, so I'm just going to adjust their scale. There we go. Now I'm going to bring it down into place. There we are. There's our rooftop. And I'm going to go ahead and name this now. I'm going to name it shingles, because that's the material that will apply to it when we get it into view. And this is going to be our rooftop. I'm not going to name it yet because we got one more modification to make to it. And if I named it now, when I made my modification to it, Hexagon would automatically change the name that I had given to it. So I'm going to wait. I'm going to come up here to select faces. I'm going to select the front, hold down my shift button, select the other front or the back, and click on my extract command. Now this is a separate piece. I'm going to hide that. I'm going to hide my building. Now this piece right here that we've got left, I made it like this because it might look good if we applied a wood board texture to it. That way it would look like the wood that usually goes across the top of a building, like a house, that's associated with rafters. So I'm just going to call this wood, and we won't be playing with that anymore, so I'll lock that in place. And this piece right here, if we made our building, brought it into view, and applied a brick texture to it, I want the option of also having the brick texture applied to these two triangle pieces that we made. Make it look as though it's still all part of the same building. So I'm going to select both of them and weld them together. Now whatever material we apply to this in view, the building, it will also be reflected up here. So I'm just going to create a brick looking color. And our shingles, let's enable the view of them. We can apply a black color to them. And our wood, I'll just apply a gray color to that. And that's our building so far. Now we've got, I think, just one more thing to do, and then we'll be finished with creating this in Hexagon, and we can bring it into view and start applying some textures to it. So this is our building, and we've got our window frames that are all part of the same object as our building. If we left it like this and brought it into view, whatever material we applied to the building would also be applied to the window frames, all in the same direction of orientation and the same scale. And that might not be exactly what we want because it will not give a very realistic appearance. And here is what I mean. Here is the building where the window frames and the building are all one solid object. And I put a brick material to it, and if you follow the line of the bricks across the building, they run straight across the window frames. It looks like some painter took a textured brush and just swiped all the way across the face of the building. There is no differentiation between the building and the window frames. And if it weren't for having shadows in my sunlight settings, they would not even stand out. You probably wouldn't even see them. They would just get lost in the image. So what I want to do in Hexagon is I want to separate the window frames from the building, make them their own separate object. Then when we texture it into view, we can, well, it gives us several flexible options. We can apply a different texture to it, or we can apply the same texture as the building, but we can scale down we can reduce the scale of the image so that it stands out, maybe even change the orientation of the texture so that it stands out. So that's what I'm going to do in Hexagon. Coming back into Hexagon, we're going to remove these window frames from our building. Now I'm going to intentionally make a big blooper here to show you what happens if you do it and how to remedy the problem. By selecting these edges, I'm going to try to select all of my window frames. Now normally, if you're not familiar with this little technique that I'm going to show you, you'd have to go and select all the insides and the outsides and then come spin around, and you would spend probably 20 minutes selecting all of these little faces all the way along here, underneath, on top, and I've got better things to do with my time than to waste it by doing that. So to select all these window frames, I'm going to come up here with my Select Edges tool, select only 2 edges on each of these window frames. I'm going to hold down Shift, select those 2, select those 2, select those 2. I'm going to come up and loop it, and as you see, what that does is it creates a continuous uninterrupted loop around those edges that I selected. And I'm going to come up here to select faces, or it is convert selection to faces, and what that does is it changes my selection. Rather than having a selection of edges, now I have a selection of faces. Now I can come up here and select my Extract tool and extract them from the building, in the same way that we've used the Extract tool in the past. So I'm going to click on my Extract tool, but unfortunately this is what we are left with. Now how did this happen? Well, I'm not a big fan of using the mullion tool, and this is one of the reasons why. It creates some very unpredictable results later on down the road when you try to make some modifications to your model. This is not what we want. This is not the way I wanted to extract my window frame. So I'm going to hit Control Z and undo my previous mistake there. So how do we go about extracting the window frames from the building? Here's how. With our building selected, I'm going to hit Control and D to create a duplicate. I'm going to disable the visibility of one of them, and I'm going to come up here to Select Faces. And I'm just going to select all the faces of my building. I'm not going to touch the window frames, just the building. I'm just going to select all the faces, and then I'm going to hit my Delete key and just delete them. Just like that, now we're left with our window frames. I'm going to disable the visibility of that. I'm going to come up here to my other building, and with the Select Faces tool still enabled, I'm going to select all the faces again. But rather than delete them, I'm going to come down here into this little tool that says Hide Selected Faces. And all this does is hide them and prevent us from, one, selecting them again, and two, from having any modifications that we apply to this from being applied also to the hidden faces. So I'm going to select the rest of them, and I'm going to hide them also. Now we're left with the faces of our window frames. So with Select Faces enabled, I'm going to hold down Control and hit the A button on my keyboard. Now that selects all of them. And I'm going to come over here to hit my Delete button because we don't need those. Now we need to see our building again. Whenever you use the Hide Faces tool in Hexagon, it always leaves you this little icon here next to the object that has hidden faces. So if we want to enable the visibility of those hidden faces, one, we can either click on this, or we can come back down here and show hidden faces. So now we have our building and we have our window frames as separate objects. Gives me a greater measure of control and flexibility when I bring it into view by having separate objects in my model. And I think that's about all that we're going to do to this. I can't think of anything more. We've got everything ready to bring into view and have some textures applied to it. So that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching here at Geekatplay Studios. My name is Gary Miller. Have a good day.